close and you can hear the soulful whisper in your ear, so fine. Singing, I'll be seeing you when the moon and stars begin to shine. Life goes on, but not without the joy of Etta's song. And I can still hear her sing to you and me.
So I would let that play a little bit longer, but we have a show to do here. We have a show to do. We're, right now on our stage. We have a show. But I do want to tell you about that, not to rob that song of its bouncy, happy vibe. Because it does have a nice, bouncy, happy vibe. It's actually written by and sung by and performed by a jazz guitarist named Coleman McEnroe, who died in a plane crash a few years ago. And this album has just been released posthumously. And I think what they did was they took what he had done and went into the studio and completed the work. And when I say they, I mean people like James Taylor worked on this. And so that's, I don't know. I'm always fascinated by that kind of thing, where somebody's work just continues, even when they're not there to do it. It's kind of a lovely thing to do. Sad, but lovely. All right, so never mind. I think I've just permanently confused the vibe of this show, but that's okay. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. The vast majority of our listeners are here in Connecticut, where I think, over the last few days, I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of you, but for me, the question of the last few days has been, am I on Scott's South Pole expedition or Amundsen's South Pole expedition? And there's downsides both ways, because if I'm on Scott's Antarctic expedition, I'm going to die. And so will everyone around me. But if I'm on Amundsen's, I'll live, but I have to eat my dog. And I'm just not, I don't know if I can do that. I just realized Declan's listening right now. Declan, I will not under any circumstances eat you, even to prevent scurvy. But you got this, just the ice and stuff. And I'll just tell you one more thing, and then we'll go to the phones here. Yeah, by the way, you can call up about anything. Your call need not amount to a hill of beans. In fact, we're excited by the opportunity to explore calls that almost fail to meet the hill of beans standard, and figuring out where that is even. And I should tell you that Mike from Woodbury will be the first caller, because he's already on the line, and we didn't get to him last time. I just wanted to tell you one little thing about my life, which is that our driveway is a very steep hill. That's what it is. Our driveway is a very steep hill. And when I say our driveway is a very steep hill, nobody believes this, including initially the significant other herself. But so this is pre-pandemic, I don't know, 2018, 2019. There's one of these days similar to the one where we've been having, these days where you just wake up and your driveway looks like a luge track. And so on one of these days, when there'd been melting and refreezing, my car was sitting in the driveway. I wasn't in the car hadn't been started, the parking brake was on, no activity for the car whatsoever, except that suddenly it slid down the hill. It just slid down the hill. I mean, the wheels didn't turn or anything, the wheels just slid down. And I saw this happen, and I went into the house and I told the significant other, and she didn't believe me. And then I would say 30 minutes later, her car slid down the hill too. That's what our driveway is like. It's the most unsafe thing I have to do every day on a day like this, is somehow make it down the driveway. I usually have, crampons and ropes. I have a couple of Nepalese guys who help me. I don't want to call them Sherpas because I'm not sure they are. But all right. So anyway, that's it. That's all I have to share. Number 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. As I said, Mike from Woodbury has the opportunity to go first. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Colin. So, since the election, the Democrats have been arguing amongst themselves, how do we get back in power? How do we get back the working class? But, I just think this is sort of a moot question, because considering what has happened in the last mere month, it's hard to believe that it's only a month that Trump has been in power, trampling over the Constitution, ignoring Congress. The next thing seems to be ignoring the courts. I mean, that seems to be the direction we're going in. And after that, the final Rubicon, seems to me, would be elections. I mean, what makes anybody think that these people would, volunteer to open the possibility of them being thrown out of power by having elections? Now, it's possible that Trump, I wouldn't put it past him. He could just say there's not going to be any more elections, but maybe the more likely approach would be something. There's actually an article in The Atlantic this week by Stephen Levitsky talking about competitive autocracies. Venezuela, Putin in Russia, Viktor Orban, Erdogan, where, there are elections, but everything, they've purged the public prosecutor's office, the intelligence agencies, the tax authorities, the electrical, they've gotten rid of all of the, the agencies that are supposed to prevent this kind of thing. And I would not be at all surprised if something like that doesn't happen in this country.
I share your worry. I wish I could sit here and tell you that that's not going to happen. I think, to quote the political theorist Ann Landers, nobody can take advantage of you without your permission. And that's sort of true and sort of not true in this situation. But I think ultimately that's why every day is a job. Every day, the job of telling the truth, every day of at least attempting to insist on the regular order of things, of the lawful behavior of the government. I do feel as though, to use your metaphor, this defiance of the courts Rubicon is maybe the most important one. It is if he will not accept the judgment of courts and live by it, we have a full-blown constitutional crisis. I mean, that is, to me, essentially the epitome of, or the full expression of, the idea of a constitutional crisis. And I also agree with you that it's not far from there to just insisting that elections will be whatever they say it is. It's odd, too, because on social media, one thing that MAGA people like to say to people like me is, these are the results of the election. Live with it. Deal with it. And I always think it's kind of funny coming from fans of somebody who, when he lost an election, was not willing to accept that and attempted to stay in power anyway. But I think the only thing that we can say is it will be every citizen's job to fight for fair and free elections and to insist on them. I do think the U.S. is a little bit different from Russia and Venezuela and places like that. Just the tradition is different. The tradition is longer. The aspirations for the country are higher. I don't know. I think all of us feel a little inarticulate when we try to talk about the current situation because it's so unprecedented. Everything about it is so unprecedented and so frightening. But I also think being frightened is not a fully adequate response. I think we have to do more than that. We have to start thinking very clearly about this. And I'll say one other thing. I could talk at great length about this. First of all, hats off to Ezra Klein. I guess I really am just kind of a fanboy. But so he has his newest podcast is a conversation with this Congressman Auchincloss from Massachusetts. And what they both say, and I think this is really important, is it's not enough to continue to say that Trump is wrong, Trump is bad, Trump is lawless, Trump is, an autocrat. You have to sort of say, this is what we could offer you instead. Here's what and I thought this guy, I haven't quite finished the podcast and I feel like I'm probably going to have to listen to it or a second time or read the transcript or something because it's so good and so smart. But it begins with that if we don't have a different story to tell the American public won't mind if there are rigged elections. They won't mind if Trump or like if, our next president is Barron Trump or something, or our next Barron is as Trump. It just, people won't mind because we won't have told them a different story. And some of that story will be told just by the overreach of the Trump administration, the overreach of Republicans in Congress. I would say that, to use Auchincloss's metaphor, taking a chainsaw to Medicaid is probably going to cause them a lot of trouble if they go all the way through with that. But it won't cause them that much trouble if we haven't told them a different story. If, the rest of the country, and particularly what is nominally the opposition party in this country, I really think the fact that the Democrats have no really good story to tell right now, not in any organized way. Listening to this guy with Klein, I thought, wow, that's a story. That's an interesting story. That's a set of things that you can vote for. But I keep going back to 2016. I remember my son coming to me and saying, I know exactly what Bernie Sanders wants and means and stands for. I literally have no idea what Hillary Clinton is in favor of, other than having a woman president whose name is Hillary. And I thought there was a fair criticism. I don't know what Hillary Clinton's campaign was really about either, and I'm not sure she did. And I think, that's the other big job. Yes, we're going to have to dig in. Everybody's going to have to make election monitoring and fair elections a personal passion project. But also, it won't matter if there isn't a different story being told. And we've got about maybe a year to figure out what that story is, or they've got a year. The Democratic leadership has a year to figure out what that story is, but maybe not even a year. So, yeah, I share your anxieties, but I also share the sense that it won't even matter if the Democrats don't do a better job of speaking to Americans.
That's absolutely right. And one of J.D. Vance now has gone to Germany and wants the Nazis to get back in power in Germany.
Well, he didn't quite say that. Might not be entirely fair. He said, "Stop suppressing the voices of the far right."
But he's endorsed the far right party,
the AFD. And that's and the AFD. I'm just trying to be fair because inaccuracy and wild generalizations is so much the currency of the Trump-Vance administration. I don't want to play their game. So, yeah, he certainly went over there, blew a really, really loud whistle, louder and lower than a dog whistle, making it clear that he has a great amount of sympathy for the far-right causes of Germany. And Germany is it is constituted in a very different way. Germany has now, for more than 50 years, labored under the weight of the history of the 1930s and 40s and tried to correct for it and has, with that example, still, if not fresh in people's minds, large in people's minds, said this is some stuff we just shouldn't do. We shouldn't say this stuff. And there's images that are so discredited, so firmly associated with acts of evil that they just don't have any place in public discourse. We typically don't go there, but in a way, that's what Vance was saying. He said you can't marginalize people just because they seem a lot like Nazis. That's not a good enough reason. I think Germany. I'm guessing that it might give a little bit of aid and comfort, certainly to the Alternative for Deutschland party, but I'm sure Germans are thinking, just shut up and get out of our business. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But yes, I was appalled by that too. But being appalled is like, it's like breakfast. You just have to have a really good one every day. All right, let's go to Susan in Clinton. The number, by the way, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. Susan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Colin. I've been listening a long time. I've never called in, never realized how easy it was to do.
Oh, it's
anyway,
so
the reason I'm calling, and I should have called about this months ago, and it's got really not that important, but I do think that the whole issue of Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and the NFL really points to a certain misogyny that exists within the NFL and people that watch football, and also society in general, and that it's spreading. It's getting worse. It's no longer just sort of an outlying thing. I think misogyny is going to be coming back in spades. And I think the Taylor Swift thing is part of that.
Say a little bit more, because that, say a little bit more about how you see that. I want to make sure I understand your point.
So people may not know this, I don't know where you've been, but Taylor Swift started dating a fairly famous Kansas City Chiefs player.
Travis Kelce.
And he's a very, very good Kansas City Chiefs player. And when she did, she started attending NFL games. And that caused so much ire and disgust from people that this person, this female person, would come and take away from, what is, I guess, supposed to be like the last vestige of true male society. I mean, I see it as nothing more than just hatred of women sort of invading male space. I guess. Is that enough, or am I not?
No. I just want to make sure I understood. And one of my producers, a big Taylor Swift fan, is pointing out that she got booed at the Super Bowl. I think the question really is, I think there are a lot of questions. First of all, the female demographic for watching football has risen and risen and risen. In other words, more women watch professional football. And a larger percentage of professional football's audience is female than has ever been the case, and that was happening even before Taylor Swift got into the mix. But it has only helped, obviously. And when we did a kind of survey of Christmas rom-coms, there were 2 TV Christmas, romantic, whatever we're going to call them, kind of Hallmark Lifetime type stories that were Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce derived. And I would say if anybody thinks that Taylor Swift is losing the public opinion battle in connection with the NFL, they're probably wrong. Maybe there's some people in New Orleans who are booing her, and maybe there are some people who are pushing back and getting annoyed and stuff like that. But, Taylor Swift is an incredibly popular public figure. I think for the most part, there's a kind of symbiosis that's going on between the Taylor Swift phenomenon and the NFL phenomenon. The NFL is the most popular form of entertainment, if that's what we're going to call it, in America today, by a long shot. There is nothing that comes remotely close. On the other hand, they still want to get more popular. They're not going to get more popular by cutting out the audience that maybe comes to them through a Tay-Tay pipeline. So, it wouldn't even be very smart corporately for the NFL to endorse that kind of misogyny. Now, I think as you're also suggesting, there's a sense of, or some questions about what's going to happen in society generally when there's this constant inveighing against DEI. What does that mean? What are they saying? And there is certainly within the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, that sense of the manosphere, the sense that many of the people voting for Trump, maybe the people who swung the election for Trump, were black men who felt left out of society's narrative, and white men, that would be white men who felt left out of society's narrative, and Latino men and it was, I think, the case that the Trump and MAGA messages, your place is over here, your place is with us, and we're going to do some things in order to make you feel less disadvantaged by a changing and more complex society. But I don't know. I wish I had a really good answer to what you're talking about. What you're talking about is a really interesting question. Let's just start there.
So I actually think the NFL likes the Taylor Swift phenomenon because I think it creates money and it creates viewers and it creates attendees. It's great for them. But I think in general, there's this backlash because, it feels like we're back to the age when women shouldn't be allowed to do that. Women shouldn't be allowed to invade our space. And it's really pronounced recently with respect to this whole, why is Taylor Swift at the football games? It shouldn't be about her. It should be about, what yard we're on, whatever. I saw it very distinctly in the past couple of weeks. I thought I'd call it.
Yeah, but that's it's not entirely new. So, there have always been celebrities at football games, and, they used to be I can go back to the 80s when Jimmy Connors had this really attractive wife, and he was in one of the major tennis tournaments, and the cameras kept going to her because, in fact, she was, enjoyable to look at, and was something a little bit less boring than people hitting tennis balls back and forth across the net. And there are people who kind of reacted negatively. I mean, that conversation has been happening forever. And I take your point that there is some segment of society, of American society, that feels as though women have come in and taken used up a lot of the oxygen, right? That in terms of education, in terms of workplace, women are thriving in certain ways that men are not, that young men are not. They don't feel the kind of pathways exist that used to exist. I mean, obviously some of those pathways existed because they had a tremendous leg up over women. That seems to have been changed a bit, and they think that it's probably changed more drastically than it really has. And so you might see, in terms of Taylor Swift at a Super Bowl or something, says, well, can't we just have this anyway? This used to be such a great guy thing, and look what's happening now. But I do think that's a sorehead minority. And I think what you said is also very true. The NFL is tickled. They are tickled to have somebody like Taylor Swift.
It's just more money.
Yeah, and who suggests to an audience they didn't have, a certain kind of young woman who might not have been interested in football, that there might be something there for them. That can only be good. Anyway, I am being told that we have to go do a break right now, so we're going to do that. The number 888-720-9677, 888-720-9677. Thanks so much to Susan for a great phone call. We will be back.
Is worth the squeeze. I could be a lot. I hope that you still love me. I never break down while I'm gone. If I ever break down while I'm gone, will you still love me? I might, but hey, I still got to go. What if I cry every show? And it's, hey, look out below. You still love me.
I'm not no Mazungu, no. I'm not no Mazungu, no. I'm not no Mazungu, yeah. I'm more like a Zulu, yo. I'm not no Mazungu, no. I'm not no Mazungu, no. I'm more like a Zulu, yo. I'm a black man raised in a white land. My first name given by my white nan. For my land, I stand up for peace, never silent. Salute my clan, never bystand. I stand out, my whole life wasn't planned out. So what's the plan now? I'm not the type to ever leave a man down or take a handout or throw a gang sign.
All right, we are back. I don't know why I insist on liking Logic. I mean, the artist Logic. I mean, the concept Logic is just probably, void at this point. All right, so our number, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. You can call up about anything. One thing I should have said in the previous conversation with Susan, and I hope Susan's still listening because I can say it now, is, I'm the one who brought this up, but the fact that Taylor Swift got booed at a Super Bowl where she's dating one of the players for the Chiefs, but the opposing team was the Eagles. I mean, I'm not sure how many people who are not full football fans understand, although if you watch Silver Linings Playbook, you would have a chance to understand this as well. Eagles fans are insane, and they are kind of famously the most horrible sports fans. I'm not saying all of them. Many of them are very nice people. But the Eagles fans, what is frequently brought up is on one occasion, they booed Santa Claus. Santa Claus made some appearance flying into the game or something, and they booed Santa Claus. The Eagles used to have, I'm not making this up, a miniature courtroom under the stands of their stadium where Eagles fans could be arraigned without the whole inconvenient business of having to bring them to a courthouse somewhere. So, the fact that they booed Taylor Swift is probably, I'm assuming that's who's doing the booing. And the other thing is, because everybody hates the Chiefs now. We're all so tired of the Chiefs. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not saying misogyny doesn't exist. It certainly does. And I'm sure the kind of anti-DEI movement is an accelerant being dumped on that campfire. But, you know, it was the Eagles, right? All right, let's go to the phones here. 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. Let me go to George first, and we also have Dave from Lake Como. Lake Como Dave, who's also ready to go here. But George, you have the floor.
Hey, sometimes fan, but always listener. It's really more of a comment. Voted for Trump first time around because, and I'm a political junkie, I was so disgusted with the Republicans and the Democrats. You know, I don't think they were serving, and I still don't think they're serving the people that elect them. And so I voted for Trump first time around with the hope that he'd kind of throw a wrench in it, and he didn't. And I did not vote for him the second time around. I am not a fan of his, but he's finally thrown a wrench in it. And, you know, it's a crazy time, but I am hopeful that good things might come of this.
Let me ask you a question. And this is a serious question. I really want to know. When you say good things might come of this, what do you think, even in terms of yourself?
Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is the number of federal employees that are 20 years old that are appalled at being laid off. Mm-hmm. And what I would say to them is, welcome to the rest of us.
Yeah, so that's an emotional gratification. I was just actually asking, like, I don't understand how people in their 20s being laid off helps you. How would it help you?
Well, it doesn't help me, but there is a reality amongst public pension employees that they've never been touched. And I do believe there is a tremendous amount of waste in our government, especially at the top as it works its way down. I'm a fiscal conservative and a social liberal. So I believe we're a very wealthy country, and I believe we can set a standard for the rest of the world. But I really think our politicians are just not serving us, and they need to.
So let me ask you another question. If you got sent in, so you're concerned about waste, and that's not unreasonable. If you got sent in to do something about waste in any kind of large organization, whether it was the government or a private company or public radio or whatever, would you just fire
my own family?
Okay, or your own family. So would you just fire 4,000 people, or would you go through the whole process of trying to figure out what was being done wastefully, as opposed to what would be closer to an essential service?
Historically, they have always said they would root this out, and they have not been able to do it.
Right. I mean, I think we could agree that in the matter of time that this has happened, and this has been happening over just a matter of weeks, it would be impossible for anybody, Elon Musk or anybody else, to have made a meaningful discernment between who represented a waste of money, what represented a waste of money, as opposed to essential services. I mean, we can take something like USAID. I mean, they didn't go through all that and say, let's get rid of this, let's get rid of that. It was let's get rid of everything, the whole thing. Yeah. So, I mean, would that be your approach if I asked you to if we started the George Commission to go in and
if we could do it in a non-political environment, but we've been trying this for decades. And it's not working. Okay, it's terrible, and it scares the hell out of me. But I think he's going to gut things, and then they're going to rebuild it. One of the things that I was really particularly impressed with, first of all, it goes back to everybody gets $1,200, right? I didn't understand why they did that, but the system that they put in place to do that, the technology, and to manage that, and to manage and for businesses to get 10 grand. Okay. That was technology that didn't exist prior to the pandemic, and it existed in a matter of days, of weeks. Companies like Salesforce and Oracle, they are tech companies and these guys are really wealthy, But the reality is they threw these systems in. So what's going to happen?
You understand this all happened under the Trump administration, right? Everything, what you're
Right,
so, okay.
yeah.
Just so we're clear about that.
No, I'm not. I think, listen, I am not a fan of the guy. I wouldn't let him walk my dog. I wouldn't let him anywhere near my children. But the change that has to take place or should take place, they have not been successful at it in decades.
I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back against that and say the only meaningful downsizing of government that I have ever seen done, and I refuse to count this right now as meaningful, but you can make your own decision about that. But was in fact what Al Gore did during the Clinton administration. The initiative was called in Reinventing Government. I believe 400,000 jobs were cut, but it involved going under the hood and really understanding, doing what I was talking about before, really understanding how it would be possible to lose a whole bunch of government positions without hurting the actual functions of government. And it was done very, very successfully. Now, one can argue that under the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration, a lot of those jobs probably got added back. But that's how you do it. You go, and I don't agree with you that it's never been done before, because it was done then, and it was done successfully. And rather than burning down an entire house and then saying, hopefully we'll be able to rebuild it, they went into the house and figured out what wasn't working and took that stuff out and preserved the rest of the structure. And so I think it's a little glib for you to say it's never been done, it doesn't work.
As I said, this scares me to death. Mm-hmm. But the reason we have Trump is because, and nobody talks about this, we have Trump because everyone has lost faith in their politicians. And I wouldn't even call Trump a Republican. Okay?
Yeah, I'll say I would agree. I would agree with that too. I'll say this too. I think we don't have. I think the key to Trump was not that government is too big and costs too much. I think the reason that we have Trump is a phrase that I learned today: cost disease. That in an ideal world, your taxes, your housing, and your health care would consume less than 50% of your income. And the truth is, everything in this country is too expensive because costs haven't been managed well, particularly in the healthcare sector. They just haven't been managed well. And the delivery of those costs, those services is not done in a sensible and efficient way. And a lot of people's money is devoured by middlemen. And I think all of that has to be addressed. But I don't think that this election was a response to the size of government. It was Americans saying, I don't feel like the society operates to my advantage anymore. I feel disadvantaged. I feel like I don't have enough money to have a halfway decent life. And I get that. But I don't think that your life, that's why the first question I asked you, George, and we're going to move on here, was how do you think this could benefit you? How do you think this would make your life better? I don't think your life is going to get better because USAID doesn't exist anymore. And I can guarantee you that your life could get considerably worse if now that the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has been gutted. That was one of your opportunities for redress against the large corporations that are controlling so much of our wealth and siphoning off so much of our wealth and not always operating by the rules. All right, so let's move along here, and we are going to, I said Lake Como Dave, so we could go there next. We've also got Mary, but I'm kind of hoping we don't get too bogged down in Trump stuff, and actually I think Lake Como Dave is ready to talk football. All right, you have the floor, sir.
Indirectly, yes. Thank you, Colin. I was ready to switch topics and jump into that last topic, but you, well played, sir. You took care of it for me. Thank you. When you mentioned football, and I was thinking you were doing it in terms of Taylor Swift and all that, but I will say this, and I'm wondering how many other people feel this way. I used to be a huge football fan for a large proportion of my life, and I'm still kind of a nostalgic football fan, like stuff from the 60s, 70s, whatever. But now, with what's gone on with the last 8, 10, 15 years, as far as the increased incidence of concussion, head injuries, and then the horrific effects of CTI and other brain injury that you're seeing in retired players, it just, I know that they assume the risk and that they're a lot of them are just okay with that, but I just can't be okay with watching it like I used to. It makes me feel like I'm in the Colosseum in ancient Rome, screaming my head off while the lions eat the poor, prisoners in the ring. And, I just can't do that and feel good about myself. I realize that's a extreme minority opinion, but I don't think
it's that extreme. I can certainly tell you that my former colleague and still my friend John Dankosky, you just described his feelings perfectly.
Good man.
And this is a guy who grew up in Pittsburgh. Imagine he was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, which is not as bad as being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but it's not necessarily being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan is not. It's not an activity that leaves room for a really open point of view about possible alternatives. So I salute John for being able to think, wait a minute, there's something wrong with all this. And there's in many ways football is kind of like drinking. It's sort of indefensible. It's just not good for you. But we all do it anyway. I will say this: the only thing that I would say, and I'm not arguing with your position because I think your position makes perfect sense. But in a way, the only thing, a part of it that I would disagree with is that I would say in the last, let's say, 10 years, the whole thing got taken seriously for the first time. I mean, nobody ever worried whether Johnny Unitas was getting CTI. They barely had, these days the helmets are better, the padding's better, the training's better, the blue tent is more effective, the concussion protocols start immediately, and are taken seriously, and players can easily miss 2, 3, 4 games on a concussion protocol. None of that ever happened before, So the football that we're nostalgic for was arguably considerably worse. And you think of some of the names, like is it Mike Webster? Speaking of Pittsburgh, some of the horrible things that happen to players. It's still a really freaking dangerous sport. And so is climbing Mount Everest. And so, yeah, I mean, I think everybody gets to make their personal choice about it, but I totally understand and support your feelings, Dave.
And kind of to offset what you rightly said about the new equipment and all that, I would say that compared to when Unitas and Bart Starr and the rest of them played, the hits are so much harder. Everybody's faster.
Bigger, stronger, faster. Totally.
No,
when I look at what's happened to Tua a few times in over the last few seasons, and I'm a big fan of his because he's left-handed, and we left-handed people, we stick together. And I think there's some real questions about whether he should be playing football at all. I don't know. Now it feels like we're waiting for the hit that really destroys this man. But on the other hand, as you said before, he gets to decide that. I don't know. It's a tough thing, and I salute you for bringing it up. And guess what? I think we have to go to our second and final break here. The number 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR.
want me to say I should have been strong enough to bite my lip and stay. But have you seen yourself? You're spending all your money and the remnants of your health. You can tell me that I'm crazy,
Sometimes the maestro just decides we need one more song, and I totally support that point of view. Speaking of the maestro, time to thank Dylan Reyes. He is our technical producer today. Meg Fitz is there in the booth getting the calls screened. She is screening the calls. That's Meg Fitzgerald to you. You call her Meg Fitz when you call up. I bet she wouldn't mind. And Lily Tyson, senior producer of the Colin McEnroe Show, is overseeing this whole mess. This whole glorious mess, I hope. And Jonathan McPants is a little under the weather today. We hope he's feeling better. But yeah, be careful out there. This is the worst flu season in 15 years. So, wash your hands. Wear a mask if it seems a little scary. Don't get sick. All right, here we go. We're going to go back to the calls here. We have a lot of really interesting calls here. We're going to start with Sid and then move around from there. Sid, you have the floor right now. Sid of East Hartford. Hi.
Hi. I'm a boomer, and I'm gonna say something nice about the younger generations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been looking for opportunities to express their dissatisfaction with P47, and this 50501 movement just created a website, seemingly more or less arbitrarily names a day. Let's have rallies all over the country. People show up or people register in each city, and people can search and find what's going on in their state, choose a rally, and they show up by ones and twos and families. Yesterday in Hartford, I saw people from 3 months old to at least 85, even with all the cold and ice, over 1,000 people, I think. People needed this sense of community, this opportunity to get together and say what's on their minds, and everybody can say what's most important to them. I think it's genius. I think the younger generation has reduced all the work of putting a rally together to the minimum, and it's working great.
Yeah, Clay Shirky, the internet theorist, famously said that the thing that Facebook is best at is allowing people to find one another. So if you have a rare disease that only, some small fraction of the population has, you can find a lot of the other people who have it and bond together. If you like some obscure science fiction author that nobody else has ever heard of, you can find all the other fans. And situations like this, in order to organize at a community level, it's really, really good. I do think, and I'm somewhat radicalized, as I say, by listening to the current episode of the Ezra Klein Show, that one of the conversations we're going to have as a country is what this guy Auchincloss calls the attention fracking of our younger generations. And I mean, I think Gen Z gets this. That I think, when I was teaching, and just in general, I feel like Gen Zers understand that they're living in a reality where their attention is, first of all, being manipulated and then monetized and sold to higher bidders. And the amount of time that they're spending on social media and that we're spending on social media too is alarming to them and to us, but also very difficult to control. So yeah, there's some great things about social media. There's some things about we're going to have a conversation. One of the things that I believe and that I was hearing on the Klein Show too is, in the next 4 years, and if we can't do it with Trump in there, we'll wait until the 5th year. But we're going to have a conversation about Section 230 of the CDA, the kind of protections these companies enjoy, and what they do, whether they are exercising the privileges that have been carved out for them and them alone, whether they're exercising responsibility in just kind of their kind of mining operations. All right. So anyway, but thanks for your call. And yeah, there's some really good things, and people who want to protest, they may find that they will find that social media makes protesting easier. The problem is that social media also made it possible to circulate a web of falsehoods that drastically warped people's attitudes towards the political process and caused some of the problems we're having now. All right. So where to go next? We'll go to Mary Jane in beautiful North Stornington. Hi, Mary Jane. You're on the air.
Oh, hi, Colin. I just wanted to sort of put forth on the discussion table the idea of the Ukraine. I see Ukraine and Russia now fighting as the last battle of World War II. And I think that for some reason, Putin is trying to turn the clock back to when the Soviet Union was controlling Eastern Europe. That was never necessary. And Biden, for all his faults, seemed to be pretty pro-Ukrainian. And I hope that Trump is too.
Yeah.
And that's just all I want to say.
It's a great point. I mean, the last battle of World War II looks a lot like the first battle of World War III, unfortunately.
Yes, it does.
And, I mean, I was... It's sort of weird at this point, and maybe inappropriate to say I was shocked by something the Trump administration did. But tying peace negotiations to Ukrainian mineral rights, we'll help you with peace if you'll give us access to your rare earth metals. That's not diplomacy. That's rapacious, ferocious, unreasonable, and unfair capitalistic, taking advantage of the predicament of somebody else to get money. That's just really not anything that a government should be doing. If you want to participate in the peace process, your pursuit should be of peace, not more money for your own peacemaking nation. That's just not even peacemaking. All right, so many people, and I don't know where to go. Let's go to Mary from Kent because she's been waiting a bit, and she might be the last call of the day. Probably will be. Hi, Mary.
Hi. I think extortion is the word you were looking for.
Yes, go. Thank you. Perfect. Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. I've been protesting 5 days, except for on the bad weather day, for at least 2 hours every day, up and down the sidewalks, talking to people. And I have a number of people like, what can I do? I've been giving them the advice that I heard you give day that said donate to the ACLU because that's our last bastion, holding things back. So I tell them that and vote for, send funds to Chris Murphy. Is there anything else I can tell people?
I would say Public Citizen also. Public Citizen, which is sort of Ralph Nader's original organization.
Public Citizen?
Public Citizen, yeah. I mean, the problem with all these things is they're not tax deductible. You could probably give...
Who cares at this point?
Yeah, well, some people. I'm enough of a penny pincher so that, I enjoy giving money away, but I enjoy it even more if I think I can get a tax deduction out of it. So,
I owned a Tesla, and 2 months ago I turned it in.
Yeah. I know the profile of Teslas have changed so radically. I'm sure if you're sort of left of center and you hate your Tesla now, you can find some right of center person who will actually pay top dollar for it. But
they can have at it.
Yeah.
I already got rid of it.
But yeah, I would say stuff like that. And then pick the stuff that you're really concerned about, the issues that you're really concerned about, and try to figure out who's dealing with them most effectively. The NRDC and stuff like that. If you're worried about climate change and the environment and the fact that we're not going to really attempt to do anything about any of that stuff at a governmental level, apparently, or at a national, federal level, maybe that. So figure out what's important to you in particular. If it's immigration, then there are appropriate charities there. But anyway,
I've got like 10 different signs that I alternate, and one of them is immigrants make America great. Deport Musk. Stop the coup.
Bon Iver stinks, I think, is another one of your signs. No, not really. We're going to go out with Bon Iver, but thank you so much for calling, Mary, and you were a great way to end the show today. And thanks for listening. We're going to do more shows this week, and well, I will tell you more as we go along, I guess. We are going to do a show about federal employees and the way that they've been recast as the deep state, and what does that mean. That'll probably be on Thursday.